There we go. And what's going on, everybody? I'm Chris Allen, the co-host of the HBYOB show. It's not really a podcast because we've got, cameras, mics, and all this other stuff set up. But we're here tonight to do, our monthly, discussion about home brewing, the different things that can go into it. And tonight we've got an experiment that we're going to give you guys the results for. But before we get into that, I have to introduce the owner, proprietor of HBYOB, Joey Brumley. Joey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Chris?
Not too bad. I know we've been arguing about the results of this competition, I guess, because we want to try and find out like who's right in terms of whether or not the kegged versus bottle conditioned. I know folks have been talking about that on Facebook for the past few days and whatnot, but we'll get into that shortly. But along with us, Mark Price. Mark, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fine. I'm here live today because I heard we were actually drinking beer. So I'm in a little window, but I'm actually. Can I wave? I am actually at the table.
Accurate. You are on the right side.
I am at the big boy table tonight. So I did show up. So I could sample beers and give you my opinion here.
For the technical discussions, but once there's beer involved,
I'm here.
And then he shows up.
Right.
You guys are more than welcome. Anybody else that's watching this at home, you guys are obviously welcome to do the same. Stop on down and offer your 2 cents because, like I was saying, I would say for the past 20 minutes, we've been going back and forth over the pros and cons of bottling versus kegging. And then also the differences that we think make up for why we chose what we chose. But we'll get into that here in just a second. But what are we talking about today, Joe?
So today we're going to talk about basically our last cast was over how you get any beverage into your fermenter, get things going. It was basic starting. Now it was in your fermenter. How do you get it into bottles? After it's done fermenting, whether you're making wine, beer, whatever it may be.
Right.
I just want to go over that's today. We're also going over the beer experiment on a beer that was bottle conditioned, which means with priming sugar, and a beer that was kegged. We did a side-by-side taste test. So if you want to hear those results, stay tuned. That'll be within the next half hour or so. And then next cast that we're going to do is going to be in March the 18th. That's going to be over equipment upgrades. So now you've got your basic starter kit. You've had your first beverage. You love to home brew. What are some of the things that take it to the next step? Okay. So, whether we'll get into it then, but we're going to go over, kind of the next step on your home brewing equipment to get going. We're also going to do for our beer experiment, we're going to do a liquid yeast versus a dry yeast beer. So we're going to try to tell the difference between two of those. So I guess if you guys are ready, we'll get into today's topic, which is basically how do you package your product.
Yeah. And I would say that I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I would assume that most folks that are just kind of getting into it, they probably don't have all of the equipment to hop right into kegging. So I would think naturally, if you're just getting started out, that you're going to hop right into bottling, right? Is that what most folks kind of lean towards?
Yeah, so when it comes down to it, the first thing after your beer's in a fermenter, whether it's in a fermenter or a secondary, once you want it, most people aren't going to want to drink out of one big vessel. There's either yeast down there. You're going to want to get into some type of bottle of some sorts. The very first one would be just your standard, say if you're a beer maker, your standard beer bottles.
12 ounce, right?
Yeah, this is a 12 ounce. They come in 22. We've even got flip top bottles that make it really nice. If you're a winemaker, we've got wine bottles. We've got 750 milliliter wine bottles as your standard wine bottle. We've got 375. That would be kind of where most people are going to put all of their beverages. So if it's wine, you're going to do that. Kombucha can kind of be in the middle. Beer, ciders are going to go in beer bottles. Biggest reason, if it's going to be carbonated, you're going to want a cap. If it's not carbonated, you can use a cork.
Now, do many people start? I started with pints. When I first did mine, I did pints.
It doesn't. So we'll go over the how-to process. Right. The actual size of the bottle doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. The process is the same, but I just did pints, so I had less to clean.
Yeah.
And I knew if I could drink 12 ounce, I could drink a pint. So I kind of went with a little bit bigger bottle.
Yeah.
We've even got
the bottle sizes.
So we've got 12 ounce, 22 ounce, 16 ounce, and we've also got liter bottles. Those are in the flip top style, which we'll kind of get into that a little bit more. The one thing, I'm talking beer right now, you don't want to use anything with a screw top, whether it's a Bud Light bottle. You just don't want to use a screw top because you're going to naturally be building carbonation in there. So
now, me and you both, or I got started long before you with the Mr. Beer kit, and the Mr. Beer kit did come with plastic reusable screw caps.
Yes,
those, but they were special. I was told you couldn't use,
those aren't preferred, but you can certainly use those. A lot of soda makers like to use those style because they're PET bottles, so you can squeeze them. Because with soda making, if you're naturally carbonating it, they will explode if you don't get them in the refrigerator in time. So people like to use the plastic bottles because you don't know how carbonated it is. With this plastic bottles, you can squeeze and see where they're at.
Yeah.
Mr. Beer's a great start, but like I said, I'm talking more of if you're going to get into home brewing, I would not recommend that step. Plastic scratches are tough to clean. And the biggest reason why you don't want to use screw top bottles is the carbonation. Since it's naturally carbonating, it's building up slowly. So if it's not trapped in, it can potentially leak pretty quick.
Gotcha.
Some people say, well, why not use a growler or a 1 gallon jug? When you're naturally carbonating beer, there's a lot of sediment that develops on the bottom. So by the time you got halfway into a growler, you'd have a bunch of yeast slurries stirred up everywhere.
Oh, and nobody wants that, like in their beer.
So once you have your beverage and you're going to move it over, I would recommend getting a bottling bucket. One of these looks like there's a spigot on the bottom. That way you can turn the level on and off. I would also recommend picking up a bottle filling wand. What you do with that is you can actually push it in the bottle, and as you push it all the way down, it starts to flow. When you take it up, it stops the flow because there's a pin down here.
It fills from the bottom up.
From the bottom up. Any type of beverage, you don't want to be pouring it in or splashing it in there. Oxidation is beer's worst enemy, so you want it filling from the bottom up. And then the nice thing about these is the displacement of the plastic leaves the perfect headspace for the carbonation to fill. If you fill a beer bottle all the way to the very, very top and cap it, there's not enough headspace for the carbonation to build up, and you're going to pour out a flat beer. So that's a nice thing. The bottle filling wand comes with all of our kits. If you're going to be doing beer, this is what a capper looks like. You truly just put the cap, there's a magnet right here, or I just put the cap right on top of the bottle, and then truly it's that easy. Some people wrench these way too hard. You really just let the device do the work. If you're breaking the arms off these or you're snapping the necks of your bottles, you're wrenching them way too hard. I've had mine for this identical one for like over 10 years now, and I'm still using the same one. If you're doing winemaking, now we also sell a bench capper style of one of these. I don't like the bench capper style because I believe that if you have, say, 12-ounce bottles, this size bottle, over the years, you're going to get a lot of different bottles. You're moving the backstop around constantly, and it's kind of it's more time consuming than just using this tried and true capper. Now, if you're doing bottling, same thing. I would still recommend a bottle filling wand. You can put it in any different size vessel. This is a hand corker. You basically put the cork right down in there, and then put it over the neck of the bottle. It is now, and then it pushes the cork in there. Yeah. Now, I will admit, if you're doing a lot of wine, I hate this thing. It leaves big dimples in the corks. You can see one I demoed for a customer. I mean, the cork's perfectly in there. This won't do that job. The feet right here is what grabs onto the bottom, onto the bottle. It will slide around everywhere, especially if you're using Star Sand. Star Sand's extremely slippery. Yeah. So you will fight this. You will bust your knuckles on your counter. Now, if you're doing one batch of wine a year, this is cheap. But if you're doing a lot of wine, I have the opposite recommendation. Get you a floor corker. Okay. It's well worth the investment. Okay. That being said, I mean, honestly, when you're moving it, when you're bottling wine, you're just going to move it from your carboy, and then you're going to move it into your bottling bucket, and then from there, you're going to leave all the leftover yeast and things that have settled to the bottom in the carboy or fermenter. And then that way, when you put it into the bottling bucket, you're just getting it free of all that. It's the main reason why I would recommend going to a bottling bucket. Cuts down on floaties in your bottles. Gotcha. When you're doing beer, you're going to add a little bit of what's called priming sugar, which is kind of a good segue to what we're getting into in just a little bit. Basically, what you'll do is on a saucepan, you'll heat up If you're doing a 5-gallon batch, roughly 4 to 5 ounces of what's called priming sugar. You melt that down in boiling water. You add it to your bottling bucket. Siphon all your beer with the tube all the way to the bottom up. Once again, we don't want the beer splashing around. And then just gently stir all the priming sugar into the solution. You're going to do it as a batch, and you're done. You've added the sugar to there. If you don't want to go that route, or say you're doing something like a cider, the cider kits we used to sell didn't come with a bottling bucket, it didn't come with a bottling bucket. We sell something called carbonation drops. I don't have any here. They're just these little pills that you stick in one in each bottle.
In the past, the sugar, just a sugar pill, more or less, sugar tablet.
It's truly corn sugar that's just in pre-proportioned amount. So it's you use 1 for a 22-ounce bottle, you use 2 to 22 or 24-ounce bottle. When you start getting into the metric system, those bottles you'll get something called conditioning tablets. No, there's a thing called conditioning tablets. We can get those for you. That's a problem, but you got to use a bunch of those. But the sugar drops are much easier.
Right.
I mean, basically, in a nutshell, bottling really isn't difficult.
Just time consuming.
It's time consuming. I don't think there's a home brewer out there that will not agree. It's the least fun part of home brewing.
Yeah, easy.
And we didn't even talk. I mean, before you do anything that you did, you have to sanitize, wash, clean every bottle. I mean, there's a lot of work involved, even if we get to that point with bottles.
So, like our beer experiment today, there's already 4 bottles in my sink from our experiment that I got to clean as soon as it's done, because if you don't clean them, what happens? They turn to concrete at the bottom, and you got to throw them away. They'll get infected. And then, so as soon as you pour a beer out, I recommend immediately wash it out with hot water. I wouldn't worry too much about any detergents or any cleaners, but just really, really hot water. Get all the crud out of there. Hang it to dry. Save them all up. When you're ready to bottle your next beer, drag them all back out. Now, the nice thing is I'm looking at it right now. Our beer bottle come in a nice divider case. When you're done with it, just take it. This has got beer in it. Just turn it upside down, sit it in the case. That way it keeps the dust from getting into the bottles. And that way you're just taking a couple cases of, to bottling
Storage.
But then once you get that, you gotta then rinse them with cleaner. There's bottle scrubbers. There's things you hook up to your sink. After you
have one of those.
Get those all clean, get those all rinsed. Mind you, if you're doing 5 gallons, you're looking at like 53 roughly 12-ounce bottles.
Which is why I did pints. That got you into the 40-some bottles, and obviously 22 ounces would get you even less bottles.
But then once you get those all cleaned, then rinsed, then sanitized, then hang those back up to dry, then you got to fill 50 of them, then you got to cat 50 of them. And I've got a nice scar in my hand what happens when you drink beer the entire time of the bottling process and you lose your patience and a knife cuts you, but it's a long story.
Right.
It happens with the woes of home brewing. That's kind of where my next step would be. That's where I would recommend getting into kegging. Now, kegging is more of an investment. Don't get me wrong, but with kegging, it instead of filling 50 bottles, you're filling 1 essentially. You're cleaning.
Really more tolerable for me. If I hadn't switched to kegging, I'd have stopped making homebrew a lot sooner.
I'm saying, because I mean, all of that I mean that Joey just walked through. I mean, instead of what you rack off in 6 steps or something like that, just before you even get to bottling, it's really just a couple of steps where, I mean, if you need to, clear out your keg, and then after that,
it's the same 6 steps, just one big bottle.
Yeah, just one big bottle.
You're not doing it 50 some times.
Yeah, big difference between the two.
For me, when a keg goes, I immediately clean it.
Yeah.
Just like we talked about, I clean it. It's ready to go. I put sanitizer. It's all said done. It sits there. And then when I'm ready to when I'm ready to keg, I throw it right in there. I'm done. It's like not even a 30-minute process versus bottling will run you at least 2 hours if you're doing a 5-gallon batch.
Yeah.
Which goes to if, say, you decide, hey, I'm brewing, I want to upgrade into kegging, which I highly recommend. I find you'll probably home brew more often. I just enjoy it. That's where the kegs come in. I have a small one here, so it doesn't take up too much space. Oh, still got sanitizer in it. This is just a 2.5 gallon. We sell 5 gallon. Like I said, there's not much to them. They're just basic parts up here. The lid, you get it on and off, pressure relief valve. There's not much to them.
Yeah. Would you recommend like that size specifically for those that want to get into like competitions and whatever? I feel like lugging around something like that would be much easier than taking a full 5-gallon keg down with you somewhere.
Well, if a 5-gallon keg's only halfway full, it's still pretty much going to weigh the same weight. It's going to take up a little bit less space.
Yeah.
I don't generally recommend. Actually, the 2.5-gallon ones are for people who don't want a designated kegerator like fridge.
Yeah.
The 2.5-gallon ones.
Fit in a regular fridge.
Height is usually the problem.
Right.
I believe it's like 25 inches exactly on a 5-gallon keg.
Mm-hmm. It's just like barely fridge.
You got to like cut a refrigerator and modify it to do that, which is, it's very doable. We have all the pieces to do that, but the 2.5-gallon ones they're just not as common. You'll spend the same amount on a 2.5-gallon as you will on a 5-gallon. So you're cost wise, you're investing technically twice the money because you would need 2 of them if you did a 5-gallon batch.
Right.
I like my 2.5 gallons for when I go to events like we talked about or parties.
Yeah.
I can just get a little handheld CO2 dispenser. The beer is already carbonated. You just shove that keg, fits perfectly in a 5-gallon bucket.
Yeah.
Hook a little faucet to it because I don't feel like bottling. So I just bring a whole 2.5-gallon keg to a party. And the nice thing is, unlike a bottle, once you open it, you're committing to drink it.
Right.
Versus a keg, if you take that to a party and you've got a CO2 dispenser, little handheld CO2 dispenser, what they don't drink goes back home with you.
Exactly.
Don't forget the red solo cups.
Yeah.
The red solo cup is very important.
Oh man, that takes me back.
But with the keg, you're also going to need your dispensing, but you're going to need your CO2 and regulator. This is a 2.5 pounder. This is kind of what it looks like. Nothing too intimidating, or it's intimidating at first, but this is basically what's going to carbonate your beer. It's also what's going to serve your beer, and it's also what's going to store your beer. A lot of people ask me, well, am I going to get the same shelf life off a naturally carbonated beer versus a CO2 beer? And I tell people it should not be the same, provided that you left it on gas the entire time. We can get into the anatomy of this. I think there's actually a YouTube video. I kind of run through a crash course on how I keg a beer. If you want more information on how to keg, either come to the store or visit us on YouTube. We can get in the nuts and bolts of that.
Gotcha. So for one of those, let's say, 2.5 pound like CO2 tank, how long do you think, or how many refills? Because if we want to talk about the cost benefit between bottling and kegging, if you just save up enough bottles, caps are virtually inexpensive, at least comparatively speaking. But if I have to go now buy a CO2 tank, get all the tubing, get a regulator, at the very least, how often do you think most folks wind up at least refilling their CO2 tank throughout the year?
So I look at it less in linear, like in the sense of time, and more how many kegs do you get through.
Okay.
So most generally, believe it or not, most of my CO2 refills come from people who are just buying domestic kegs from the store. The internet will tell you on a 5-pounder, which is the most common CO2 tank that's on the market, I would say comes with most kegerators. It's what we sell the most of here in the store. That should get you 3 to 5 half barrel kegs, and a half barrel is 15 gallons. So 15 times 5 would be
75.
There we go. So 75 divided by 5.
Well, we just did that.
Yeah.
75 divided by 5 that's 15.
So 15. Yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah, so
I'm on the spot.
I was told there'd be no math. I already drank beer. No math after I've drank beer.
Yeah, I didn't get into brewing for my math skills. That was for
I
sure.
think 75.
But my point is, so my point would be, you're looking at, what did we say, 15?
Yeah, so
15 home brews.
Yeah.
So, 15, I do everything in home brew. Yeah. So, yeah. But it honestly, price-wise, is the same, if not cheaper, than the cost of priming sugar. Okay. If that makes sense. If that's a way to kind of like put apples to apples.
Sure, right.
So depending.
Like a normal, my normal is, let's say, I brew, let's say, once every 6 to 8 weeks. And that might be like pretty aggressive for some folks that are just getting into it. So if you're just getting into it, let's say maybe you brew once every 3 to 4 months, so maybe a few times during the summer or something like that, you're probably going to be sitting on that CO2 tank for a few years then.
Yeah. So I was gifted a long time ago a 20-pounder and a 20-pound CO2 tank, and that's what I use now. And they have to be hydro tested every 5 years. Your CO2 tank. It's one of the maintenance things that you have to do, just like a fire extinguisher at your house. Yeah. And I know every time I would go to get it filled would be just past the hydro test date. So it would last me like 5 years. And I drink and pour a whole lot of home brew. One thing to make note of as a home brewer, we probably won't get as much life out of a CO2 tank because we are carbonating our beer. We're not just dispensing the beer like if you bought, a keg from the distributor. We're actually carbonating our beer with the tank too. So I would say, to be fair, it'd probably be between 7 to 10 brew sessions. I would say you're looking to get it refilled. I do joke to customers all the time. It will last you less than 1 day if you have a CO2 leak.
Yes, that is correct.
So check for leaks.
Yeah.
I've had a customer come.
Been there, done that.
I think the record is 5 days in a row. I've had a customer come back, and I'm finally like, I like seeing you, but you need to get something different.
Yeah.
But
So right, there's a problem.
Real simple. I mean, like I said, we'll get in the nuts and bolts of kegging. It's not hard to find leaks. It really isn't. You just come in the store. I can walk you through how to do it. It's not a problem.
Just spray some either sanitizer water or something that will bubble foam around your tube.
On dish soap, I use Star Sand just because if I have to open stuff up and get to it and it gets in my beer,
might as well have it be sanitized.
I'd rather it be sanitizer than Dawn dish soap. So,
right. And do you guys know just offhand, like at services around here? Because you mentioned the hydro testing. I went to the Silco. I think was the local place. Do they still do that?
Yep. Okay. We don't do the hydro testing here. We do the fills. I can't speak for Silco, but our CO2 is food grade. I think Silco is more of like an industrial place, but they can certainly. I know for a fact that they can do the hydro testing.
Yeah.
I know Air Gas can do it as well. The downfall to Air Gas is they send it to Silco, charge the same price, but you'll have to wait. You'll have to wait for them to send it to Silco, then for it to come back and then call you to pick it up.
Gotcha.
If you go to Silco, it's in Beaver Creek.
Yes.
If you go to Silco, you'll truly walk in and like 10 minutes later, you'll walk back out the door with the same tank. Yeah. And I think they'll even fill it for you if you need to.
$30 or somewhere around there?
It's been a long time. I'm on that 5-year period.
Yeah. I know mine's probably about to get soon too. But if I'm remembering correctly, I think it's around the $30 range or something.
So all you got to do is just look on your CO2 tank, and there's a date stamped on there, and it's good for 5 years from that date before you need it tested. And so, like I said, but we do CO2 refills here in the store. All the distributors send people our way for that.
Makes a loud noise when you do it. So be prepared, folks, if you come in here to get your CO2 tank refilled.
It does make a loud noise, but it's only temporary. Yeah. But like I said, just check for leaks, and you should be good to go there. With that being said,
let's get to, does it make a difference in flavor? Not the work, not the money. Does it make a difference? Because I'm also one of those that have always thought that draft beer tastes better than bottle or cans. Meaning, if I buy a bottle of Blue Moon, so we're not even talking homebrew. If I buy a bottle of Blue Moon, to me, it doesn't taste as good as if I go to a bar and get draft Blue Moon. Heineken.
Hold on. I tuned out. So rewind. Do you like it better from a keg?
I think draft beer, even with the big names, is better than the bottle or the can. Meaning, I think Blue Moon tastes a lot. I won't buy Blue Moon for home anymore or drink that at home. But if I'm out somewhere and it's on tap, I would have one because I think it tastes better. I would
argue Blue Moon isn't craft beer, but
and I'm not talking craft beer. I'm just saying no. You know me. I've drank Heineken for a long time. There's a restaurant here in town, only one I've ever been to, that has Heineken on draft, on tap. I think it tastes better than the bottles, and I drink a lot of bottles of Heineken during the week. So I'm kind of curious now. We're talking craft beer at this point, but is there still a difference?
So there's also someone. I guess we could go through a couple of myths
and maybe it's in my head that it's a myth.
Well, so we're gonna go.
Or is there really a flavor difference?
Let me rewind. We did an experiment. I actually didn't brew the beers. A customer brewed the 2 beers. I want to say thank you, Chris. Not this Chris to my right, Chris Wilburn. He brewed these beers for us. They taste fantastic.
Yeah.
So we really enjoyed the beers first. So before even the experiment, beers are really good. So that helped things out. If there had been beers we didn't like, that would have made the experiment a little bit harder.
There were sours or something. Like
it was one batch of beer that he just bottled 2 different ways. Make sure people understand.
Yeah, he brewed one batch of beer. So the beer was identical. And then I believe he just bottle conditioned like a 6-pack and then transferred the rest of it to a keg, carved it up. So we're drinking one beer that used priming sugar, which is, I don't know which one still.
Yeah, we don't know yet.
We don't know. We So one
cheated.
beer was someone used priming sugar, and then the other beer was used CO2 to get the carbonation.
Mhm.
So back to what Mark was saying earlier was he likes the flavor of the CO2 beers over a bottle conditioned beer.
Right.
Now, where we can debate that a little bit one tier further is most beers you're buying in the market were kegged, then put into bottles like what we have today.
We're right.
This would be the same as if we went to the grocery store. You know, the difference would be, I believe Sierra Nevada still may actually bottle condition their
I've
beers.
heard that. I think that's the case.
There's a handful of breweries that still actually will. What they will do is they will add the sugar, or they will even put the beer once it hits a certain gravity into the bottles, and then they truly will spit it up and sit it in a room temperature warehouse for weeks.
Oh,
Let it get to
Let it
it.
condition in the bottles before they then chill it and send it to grocery stores or however they do it.
okay.
Now, most beers, they're using what's called a bright tank, and that's basically a fancy term for force carbing your beer before it hits a keg. Breweries do that. We force carb it as home brewers in the keg. But nonetheless, most beer, you're probably...
Somebody else sat in a chair and rolled that
yeah.
5 gallons back and forth, and you hear your gas going.
Yeah.
You know,
Crank that thing up. to
nothing like watching a football game and roll your beer because, like, I want this ready sooner than it would take otherwise.
So in what Mark was talking earlier, in that case, he thinks he likes just the taste of the beer being more, I guess the quote would be fresh off the tap, versus a beer that probably got thrown into a bottle and got warm and hot multiple times, possibly. Because I do know most places that are doing that, the beer has to be cold to carbonate.
Right.
Then you're putting it in bottles. Then the brewery doesn't have the capacity to store it cold.
Right.
So it gets warm there. Then it hits a truck where it's got hot and cold. Who knows?
Right.
Then it goes to a grocery store, or a beer store, which it may have got hot or cold. Who knows? At some point, then it's refrigerated and then drank. So it's gone through quite a bit of temperature fluctuations.
Right.
Versus, I know personally, since we sell beer here at the store, if you get a keg, it's stored cold the entire process. So once it gets crashed to be, it's supposed to.
Most bars do it, some don't. But
I mean,
bars
in theory, the beer, once it got cold to carbonate, it never then got warm.
Okay.
So that's a whole other topic on whether that has a flavor difference or not.
Mm-hmm.
But that's part of the mental thing, though, to me. You know, mentally, do I just think draft beer tastes better? Which would that affect this test?
So the next tier would be if we'll go a little bit into some of the myths, is I know someone close to me who goes, man, I can't drink draft beer. Why is that? I won't name names. Yeah. Because every time I drink draft beer, I get so hungover the next day. And I think it's because when you're drinking draft beer, you have no gauge on how much beer you drink. You just keep pouring it from that pitcher. You keep sending it back up to the bar.
That might be a mental thing. I mean, or just like a habitual thing.
Well, there's a myth. The myth I hear, though, is because it has more carbonation. Mm-hmm. So there's more bubbles. More bubbles makes it get to the bloodstream quicker. And that gives you the hangover more than if it was bottled. Myth to me. I can only go by taste. Oh, yeah. I think most beers that I've ever had taste better draft than they do out of a bottle or a thing.
Now we got the same argument over I think it was when Yingling was like really popular, and we went like back and forth over whether or not Yingling from a can versus like Yingling draft was actually like worthwhile for you to. If there's a difference. I never got the difference back then, but I know somebody who was like really big into like Yingling draft. Like it was just like that.
Oh, you can't drink anything from bottled, bro. That's
right. Now, but that being said, I don't think Budweiser to me tastes any better or different. No, so
it doesn't taste
like Budweiser bottle or draft, to me it tastes the same.
If something tastes like nothing, it's tough to
that's my point. Right. Where at least Heineken, anything that has a little bit of a flavor, there seems to be a difference. So I'm excited about the results.
So that's the other part. So we did the results. We got together and we had people write down what they thought. We did complete blind where none of us that participated in it had no clue. We still have no clue. Right. It's on my phone and an email. I haven't opened up the email yet. I promise you can believe me or not believe me, but at
the very least we haven't seen it. Mark
they don't.
We haven't seen it yet.
We've
offered our thoughts.
So we all voted. Mm-hmm. Then we opened all the votes, and then we kind of had a sit down. By then everyone was gone, so we didn't go that far. But as we opened all the results, we then kind of went over and then had a discussion on why we came to the conclusion that we did.
what we think the answer is going to be.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the fun part.
We think we know the answer, but we don't. But
If this video is gone tomorrow, you'll realize we epically failed.
Yeah.
Or-
Either that, or we'll just Chris like he lied to us. He switched him. He doesn't know.
So majority definitely lean towards one side than the other. Is that fair enough to say?
Oh, yeah.
There was some that thought that conflicted, but I think overall, I wouldn't use the word unanimously. I think we definitely. The first thing I would note would be
picked both, but more people picked one than the other.
there was definitely a huge flavor difference in the beers. I think that's the thing we should talk
Taste
about.
Yeah.
That
Everyone did say there was a difference.
Yeah, there was easily a difference. At least I could immediately taste the difference between the two. And then I think it comes down to personal preference, because if you already lean towards draft beer being the way that you would want to like typically consume beer anyway, that would almost, to me, it almost feel like your palate is conditioned to want that type of. So it knows that this is something that it's a draft beer versus bottle condition. So I lean towards draft beers anyway, and so I was almost like, I think, at least I think I was able to pick out like the draft beer quicker. But that might just be me. I don't know.
Right, because we had gold cap and a black cap.
Right.
So we had 2 6-packs brought to us. One had a black cap like this, and then the other one just had your, standard gold cap.
Right.
On my email, it tells me which beer is which. And then like sampled both, went back and forth. We're kind of going. I'm even going back and forth a little bit right now.
Second guess yourself.
Oh,
no, and even just watching it.
But
So
even looking here, the colors, I can tell there's a different. They look different.
they definitely look different.
Mhm.
To me, that's just the way that they're acting. Even just looking at them right now, and like I said, I hope I am right.
If not, you gotta shut it all down. Like if we were wrong, like we're never doing.
Well, first of
it
all,
again, that's it.
All three of us selected the same one
As our favorite.
as our favorite, and what we thought taste the best. The customer of the store, they leaned towards ours, but people did like both.
So I will say, generally speaking, when trying to conduct this, they will say a bottle conditioned beer will have smaller bubbles. They'll be tighter together. Most people say that bottle conditioned beers should taste better. What else?
But again, all could be myths. We really don't know, right?
It's all personal preference. So
Right.
I mean, you definitely have that. I mean, someone who likes more traditional styles, they would have been naturally carbonated, so they would have been bottle conditioned. So
Right.
I mean, a purist of beer is of course going to be biased to bottle conditioned beers because that's
how they would have done it.
how they would have done it.
Is there anything is there a difference in head retention, like in terms of if you go bottle versus kegging, or if you've done it correctly, it shouldn't really matter like one way or the other, because that's more controlled by grains and things of that nature.
Well, when you get to that conversation, you start talking volumes, which is a measurement people will a general term, or not general term, but a term breweries will use on how carbonated a beverage
Volumes
is.
of CO2.
So if it's super carbed up with either or, it's going to have more lacing and more carbonation than the
Right.
other. So I mean, that's
Like the styles like for that specific beer anyway.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
so you're not going to necessarily get something out of one that you're not going to get out of the other.
Yeah.
One thing I've noted, it definitely seems
Up to the camera,
so.
the two different.
This one is the black cap,
Yeah.
and
Black
I
cap.
don't know if I can kind of it's backwards to me. I can't really do it. And then this one is the gold cap. I can't move around too much until it's full. So at first notes, I drank the black cap one first, and I thought it was a good, smooth, clean pale ale.
Mhm.
Then immediately when I got to the gold cap one, I truly got almost a appley kind of note in the aroma,
Yeah, it smelled different.
Cidery.
and it kind of got that in the taste as well.
Yeah.
So that immediately, like honestly, I thought I knew which one was which by like before I was even drinking
drank.
it. I honestly thought I was going to do it by appearance or by seeing the carbonation. I think the opposite. The one I actually do find a difference in the bubbles. Even like the one now, like even the way they're sitting in the glasses.
The one I thought was carbonated the most is not the one I liked.
So even just watching it in the glass and watching how the carbonation's reacting, I'm
firm.
I'm firmly thinking that I guessed correct. I really
So,
do.
are we going to tell them that the three of us all selected the black
yeah.
cap?
And
I mean,
black cap is
Being
That we assume it's the keg one because we all liked it better. So-
which that would be the other thing. Most people would say the fact that I liked the black cap one is what made me think it was kegged, because the smart ass of me is just like,
Right.
I
But it doesn't mean that, right? I mean, we might find that.
one note would be it was cleaner in flavor. Is that
Yes,
fair
right.
enough?
Oh, yeah.
And so if you're going for, like Chris mentioned earlier, a sour or something where you want some of those esters, that kegging
I mean, it
might
would-
not be
it
as much
might-
of an option.
Exactly. Yeah.
We still don't know.
We don't know, right?
So if you're out
wrong, then shut it all down.
if you're out there watching Chris, or when you get not Chris to my right, the Chris who brewed these,
Here.
He's
He
either-
could be laughing right now. Going, them idiots had no clue.
he's either laughing like I knew Joey couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I truly firmly believe the black cap is the kegged and the gold cap is the bottle condition. Now we did
Right.
have one of the things I remember is someone who thought that the gold was the keg.
Right.
Yeah, we had a customer.
He said was because he liked
Better
it.
mouthfeel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's what he.
was-
that's
I was
right.
gonna say he just said he liked it better, and that's why when I seen his vote, I'm like, oh, cool. And he
Difference of opinion. I like it.
It's still a
Gotta-
taste.
his CO2 tank filled while I was here. So
We know
we don't know. He didn't like it so much that he's gonna go home and start bottle conditioning now instead. So it's not like these beers are like night and day.
That would be my thing. Once I know the answer, my argument would be, let's say we're wrong.
Okay.
Then my question would be, as a brew store owner, I would say, so now how do I make mine? I won't change how I'm going to do it. I'm going to keg. I'm not going to bottle for better flavor. So now my question would be, how do I simulate that now? Do I add more sugar? Do I go less, fermenting time? I mean, now what do I do to make it taste like that?
Yeah.
That would be more than what I would want to know. Not because I'm not going to switch. I'm not going to
So-
watch the bottles anymore. That's not going to do it. I'm going to do my keg.
So-
if I want to fill in the
Yeah.
dishwasher with
So
bottles and all that.
I can have an answer for both. So if say we're wrong and we actually like the kegged beer better, or no,
Well, we like
bottle
beer
beer better.
sugar. Right.
What you would do is, instead of force carbonating your keg, there's a way you can actually add priming sugar to your keg, and
I
and
know
naturally
that.
your first glasses are going to be a big murky mess,
Oh yeah.
and it's going to require more patience. But you basically could achieve that same flavor by just using priming sugar in the keg. Now, when you do that, you have to use significantly less priming sugar because you're not splitting into many vessels. You don't need as much
There's a
sugar.
mathematical.
Yeah, you don't need as much sugar to get the job done.
Okay.
And then you're just using CO2 to push the beer out.
Yeah.
So then the next thing would be, and I guess that would be my other thing before we give the results, would be, how do you make, let's say we were right.
Mhm.
How do I make my bottle conditioned beer taste like kegged? I think honestly the only answer is age.
Yeah,
I-
yeah.
Right. And we already talked about that.
Yeah.
If we did the same test a month from now, when the bottle beer sat longer, would they be more similar in flavor?
So if we're right, I still have a couple of bottles in there. I'm going to leave them in the fridge.
See if it catches up more or
So
less.
next month when we do our cast on the 18th, we can then revisit it and go, did 4 weeks? Because like I explained to them earlier, if we're right, what would happen would be you'd brew your beer a couple weeks later, you would bottle it up. But when you bottle a beer up, fermentation starts again. So a lot of those esters and some of those off flavors, which is why I think that's the beer, they basically just kind of get stirred back into the mix.
Yeah.
Which we all know as homebrewers, if
gives
you
it that-
age it.
It gives that home brewy taste or that flavor to it in some cases.
I mean, I don't.
It's
Yeah,
just
I
a
mean,
cidery
you know,
taste.
green. A
I
lot of
just
people
don't
use
call it a cidery taste.
It's real green.
If you start drinking the beer too soon, you get that cidery taste
Yeah.
that I've always thought, when I'm like, I can't wait any longer. I'm going to go, I'm going to force carbonate and drink it right away. And then even when I carbonate it, I think it tastes better a week down the road or 2 weeks down the road. So, all right, let's open some email here.
Okay, so
Let's get an answer here so that
So we know
we've
whether
been almost 40 minutes and
I want to know that we're right. That's
We wanna
that's all
know-
I need to know.
right.
So I got an email. It says bottles. The bottles with the gold caps are natural, and the black caps are force carbonated.
we did guess right. Well, and
And
the word right I don't even think the word right is right.
So hold on.
We
So
need-
it also then says bottled directly from the kegerator taps, meaning, the same kind of essentially the same way a brewery would do
Right.
it.
Okay.
right,
Which is when, like Chris said, that home brewy taste.
right.
I don't think there is one with homebrew because,
No.
like, back to this, I couldn't tell this wasn't a commercially made beer.
No.
So like, and even like,
It'll be now the gold bottles, if they sit in there, because now I might take a black bottle home with me. The gold bottles now we need to let sit there and taste them, a month from now and see did the flavor come back.
I guess my only question with that
Or mellow
is,
out.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna use more time in order to have that flavor mellow out, are you gonna wind up losing? So say for like a pale ale, I mean you use quite a bit of hops in that. Are you gonna lose some of that bitterness?
Sure.
So that's the trade-off, right? If you want to go for better taste, you're gonna wind up losing some of the intent of the recipe in terms of bitterness.
so you're not going to lose bitterness, you're going to lose aroma.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's
so you're not going to lose your bitterness, you're going to use your aroma. So yeah, so something like a hazy IPA, I would if that's your particular style and you really stay in that lane, I would definitely, based on what we just did here, look into kegging.
Yeah, just
Like, honestly.
Yeah.
Now, if you're into stouts and porters and amber ales and things like that, and you don't mind waiting, potentially waiting the longer time period, nothing wrong with bottling. That would be kind of my consensus. Like I said, I truly feel like in a month this beer will be totally different.
Mhm.
I just feel like it's still a little bit young, and I think I was able to pick that out.
Right.
I mean, it feels good. All right, I'm one for one.
You're right.
1 for 1. Yes, that makes us a winner. Thank you for tuning into our last podcast. We are 1 for 1. We're going to leave winners.
Yeah.
But right, but we've proven even, it's less work, a little bit more money. People, there's still money involved. Bottling isn't free.
Well, yeah.
There's a cost of bottles, there's all that. I mean,
Well, unless you find a lot of store-bought, you store up a bunch of
yeah, you come up with it, but the point is
Honestly, the biggest thing about kegging is truly is as less expense and more. You almost need a designated refrigerator for your beer at that point.
That's it. You just need more. There's more cost up front. I mean, that you need.
I modified a fridge so I could keep 2 1 at a time.
Yeah, that's what I do.
And
you can find them cheap. Like you
you
can
have
see
to have a room though. Some people don't even have the space
behind me.
I mean, there are some people just don't have the space.
Yeah.
I guess, but
the space, and like I said, usually on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, you can find one for
That's
pretty
where I got
cheap.
mine. It was like $120 or something like that for just
drill a hole in the side, run your tube in there, and
And we sell all the shanks and tubing. I mean, it can be done.
I never did. I never did anything. I kept just a party thing on the inside. I don't open it up, and I just
I got the test.
yeah, I just did the little party taps, and that was it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, so like I said, that was pretty much. I feel good. Since we've
Thank God. Right.
and even that bottle sale, that's
so the guy who filled his CO2 tonight, he's on the right path. He just picked the wrong beer. He's
the guy who filled the CO2. He's
the one who picked the other one. Yeah, yeah. So he went the other route.
So on our next show, March 18th, that'll be the third Wednesday of March. The topic's going to be upgrading your equipment. So basically, it's going to be now we've got our basic setup, we've got into bottles, we enjoy home brewing, we like the process. What's some tools that's going to make our brewing to the next step?
So like stir plates, like magnetic stir plates.
I wouldn't even go that far yet, but I mean like wort chiller, like we'll get into some of the things, things like that. Some of the upgrades. I mentioned this. If you're a winemaker, throw this in the trash and get you a floor corker. That works. But just certain things like that. That's going to make your life more convenient as a home brewer, because home brewing is somewhat of a timely process. So anything that can make our home brew better and quicker, the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
And our experiment is going to be dry yeast versus liquid yeast.
See, I think that one's going to be even tougher because
Really?
Yeah, for some reason, like I guess maybe like my lack of experience in that area, like because I almost feel like I can taste the difference between bottled versus kegging. But like, are you really going to be able to see or like notice like almost immediate difference between liquid and dry? I don't know. I'm really interested.
Well, at least I'm assuming, right? If you drink them both, they're identical. Then there's no difference. If we go, no, back same thing. If everyone goes, no, this one tastes a little bit better,
right?
We'll see.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's a big one for me is going to be, people ask me dry yeast or liquid yeast, which do you prefer, which do you recommend? And I'm kind of on the fence. We'll get into it then, but there's certain styles I recommend liquid and there's certain styles I recommend dry. The biggest reason we'll discuss that then. But we chose a clean fermenting yeast.
Okay.
So when you start having the argument that I have on liquid versus dry yeast, we're trying to neutralize that out a little bit.
Okay.
So it's going to be a clean fermenting yeast. It's USO5 versus Flagship by Imperial are the two yeasts being used.
Yeah.
Like I said, that might be one of those. I may not know the difference and just say I like this one better. That would be an interesting one where dry yeast is really easy to work with. So that might sell me into I'm just not going to use liquid yeast on these particular ones. So, or I could be wrong if there's an immediate flavor difference, or maybe I'm just like I don't like any beer better than the other. It's different. So that'll be a fun one. I don't think that one I care. I don't want the pressure now about being right.
Yeah. You can bet 500. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
Again, it's still not necessarily a matter of right or wrong. It's just a matter of why one. Because, like I said, we might not know for a month.
Yeah.
Mhm.
A month from now, we might go, okay, there's no difference.
Yeah,
The issue is just the rest, the time.
Understanding the differences between the two styles. And so, like as we point out tonight, when it came to the keg, I mean, we all had we're all kind of like palate condition to like draft more, we automatically gravitate towards that.
Yeah.
And it might be the same thing for liquid versus dry. You might not even know that at this point. I mean, I don't know that. I don't know if I have a preconditioned, like for.
And you already
dry versus liquid, so
right. You already have somebody that's already making this beer, or are they doing it? Are they doing it now?
So that was the other thing. Pretty soon we're going to be having a poll on Facebook on what our next experiment is going to be.
Next one.
April is going to be, and so back to homebrewing, we need time to get the beers together. So we're going to do a poll. I know what I'd like to do, but it doesn't seem like anybody wants to do that one. I have had a lot of feedback on water chemistry, so I think we might have to knock that one out. One with good old fashioned tap water versus one where you built your water profile up.
The problem with some of those though, now you're really brewing 2 batches of beer.
Yeah.
That's what we did today came out of the same 5 gallons.
Right.
Yeah.
More like work up.
Right. So when you're actually brewing 2 different batches, even if the recipe's 100%, which would be the same thing. Another experiment down the road, the exact same batch, 10 degrees difference,
right.
Or an hour difference, or, whatever. Now you're,
might have to make that like an event, like a brew day event.
Whoever's making the beer has to try to keep this one as
close
as possible, and then hit your yeast. And
so if you have any suggestions out there, unfortunately on Facebook you can only do, it's not a poll if you can only do 2 things. That's so silly. Like you can't do that on Facebook. Facebook, get on that.
Come in the store and mention you saw the podcast. You want to see.
Comment in the video. Like I said, we're on YouTube and Facebook today. Comment in the video.
Me and Chris used to do this. Right down below, you can put a comment.
Yeah, do that. Like I said, I want you guys to drive this community of getting together and brewing these beers and doing that. So
I just want to taste them.
I want to taste them too. I think as home brewers, this is fun because we could potentially be getting better at our hobby quicker. Because we're not trying to break myths or be myth busters, but it is good to just completely blindly taste a beer and
just understand the difference.
Yeah. And so if you have any suggestions. Other than that, I think I've covered everything I need to today.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to add, Chris?
No, I'd like to echo Joey's sentiments. I think that doing these and having this discussion, hopefully hearing more from you folks at home, I think it's what kind of makes this whole thing worthwhile, because having those discussions and trying to figure out this is why I like bottling and this is why I think that bottling is. I mean, just like when that customer came in earlier and he was able to point out this is what he likes, this is what he prefers. I mean, that's great. I mean, we love having those differences. And so, once we get into some more of these deeper topics, I think more of those discussions will start to happen. I think that's what this whole thing is all about.
And another thing is, on the 18th, if you could arrive at around 6:30, that way you can taste the beers. If you don't want to hang around for the cast like today, everyone left. You can put in your vote or what you think. If we have enough time before the cast, unfortunately today the way customers and things ran into it, we kind of had to jump straight into things, but we will still have a little bit of time for discussion. And also if you have some beverage that you have brewed up and you want to bring in and share and get some feedback on, the only thing I ask is please let us know ahead of time if you just want positive reinforcement.
Oh wait, no honesty here.
Yeah.
Darn it!
I have found with beer drinkers,
They don't like to be told
a
too
lot
many.
of beer drinkers have no problem telling your opinion.
Yeah.
So I mean, like I said, I bring my beers. But like I said, if
I want you guys to try it before we head on out, but we'll give it a shot.
so, like I said, if you want to bring in something, you want to get our feedback and ways we can help you out, you can also bring that in too. As we get a bigger audience and more people come in, we'll probably do a little bit of food or some finger foods to have some fun with it.
I'll show up as long as we're tasting stuff. I'll be here.
Yeah. And as we get going on and we get past, some of the beginning topics, like I said, your feedback is great. I don't want to. I would be more than happy to be co-pilot if someone wants to do something on water chemistry or one of the more deeper topics, because I want to learn a lot myself. So let's do some topics I don't have a lot of information on. So that'll be a lot of fun, and I'll just, be whoever's wingman. So let us know, chat, text, whatever's good for you. And other than that, Mark, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Oh, thanks for letting me show up and drink beer. And just like let people know, even if they can't be here, they can. I mean, we can send them a link. They can log on if someone wants to be a guest or be on the show. Even though I'm here, I'm on a laptop different than you guys. So, people, even if they can't be here but want to be on the show, we can get them on and they can ask questions or anything. And they can ask questions in Facebook or YouTube live during the show, and we'll answer.
So, just like Sunday, we've got a MASH homebrew club out of Middletown. They're coming here to use the back room here to taste some beers and go over some things for competition. So, like I said, anything that puts us a community, you don't have to be in Ohio. You can be in, anywhere in the world, and or you can come here in the store, whichever works out best for you. So just keep home brewing, and till next time, guys. Cheers.